Hey, everybody, it is Friday, the 2nd of January, 2026. If you can believe it, I wanted to start off the new year talking about what I was excited about in the world of EVs. And I wanted to kind of count backwards for my top five vehicles that I was looking forward to, get your thoughts and see if you guys agreed and get an idea for what you thought was going to be the big impactful vehicles into the new year. So, with that said, let's jump in to what I think are going to be the real benchmark vehicles, the exciting things into the new year that I'm looking forward to. And I'm going to go backwards with the one that I think we're going to see last, actually. And that's going to be, for me, the Telo Truck. And this is a vehicle that I'm looking forward to because I think it's going to give us a little bit of an indicator on the future of EV trucks, because we've seen now with the cancellation, obviously, of the Ford Lightning, my beloved electric vehicle of choice. And it doesn't look like the Cybertruck is selling well. It doesn't look like the Rivian is selling well. The R1S is really what moves the needle there. We're going to talk about the future of Rivian in this episode a little bit later. But when it comes to the electric truck, will the small trucks do any better? And I really think that the Telo will be an interesting case, and they're going about the business a bit different than the rest. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this does in the market. They have not gone extravagant the way that other startups have gone. They're not going the way of a Lucid, for example, or the way of some of the others like Rivian, who have gone and tried to build their own factories and gone extravagant with big corporate offices. They've really just kind of got out there with elbow grease. They've got a very modest office out here in the Bay Area, and they are kind of going about it, I think, in a very pragmatic way. So they're going to start off with a small, relatively small, a situation of production where they are going to not try to produce it with their own factory either. They are going to go about it almost, and I hate to compare the two, the way that Fisker went about it, having somebody else manufacture their product, but they're responsible for all of the design and all of the IP, and they are responsible for kind of doing all the prototyping and the testing and all of that stuff we've seen out there on the road. So it's got four doors, which I think is important. I think that it has a useful bed. I've seen a lot of the videos of them driving around, and they've done a lot of comparisons with an F-150 and a full size. So yeah, really curious to see when this hits the road and gets some sales, to see how it's embraced and how it does in the markets like San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, Boston, and these urban environments. And it's going to be at a more affordable price point than we've seen the trucks before. So really curious to see how this does. I think we're going to see it in the end of 2026. So fittingly, we're starting with number five, the Telo Truck. Honorable mention, by the way, to another kind of micro truck that Amazon has out there, and that is the Slate. So a little bit different approach there from Slate, but I think we're also supposed to see them towards the end of the year as well. But Telo is the one I'm really excited about, but I did want to give an honorable mention to see how the Slate does as well. I think both of those will be indicators of what happens in 27 with Ford's affordable EV, which will also be a smaller truck. So very interested in that. Also in the affordable category for number four for me, something I'm really interested to see how it does is going to be a bring back product, a product we've seen before, and that is the Chevy Bolt. Now, this one is something that they've redesigned a bit, but it really looks very similar to what we've seen in the past. But this is going to be that affordable product that really is missing from the marketplace. We have seen that the Tesla has tried to kind of have the standard Model Y and the standard Model 3, but it still does not land at a price point, I think, that I would call necessarily affordable. So my number 4 really is the Chevy Bolt. This is a known name, a known product, a trusted brand in GM, who's got a ton of vehicles out there with Equinox and Blazer and just a huge lineup out there. So I really want to see how the Bolt does out here in 2026. And does it get some momentum without the federal tax break? Does it get some numbers? Does it do as well as Equinox has done? And what do they do with maybe lease incentives and 0% APRs? Do they move the needle with the Bolt? Does it get embraced in the marketplace? Does it get some momentum here? I want to see what happens with it, or does it die out? I think if it does die out, if it doesn't catch any kind of momentum, if it's not embraced by the market, that's a bad sign, really, because I do think it's coming in at the right price point. So again, I think this is one of those things that I really want to see how it does. The U.S. market has obviously been owned by Tesla, and we know that they're going to have a certain amount of share all the time. But will these other brands be able to get a foothold and get something more than just the very relatively small share that they've had so far? And if something's going to do it, I think it's got to be an affordable number. Again, being a Ford fan the way I am and looking forward to 27, how something like this does, I do think, again, is an indicator of what we might see in 27. If we just can't get any kind of sales from an affordable vehicle like the Bolt, once again, what does that say about what's to come in 27 from that affordable universal platform by Ford? So yeah, excited to see what the Bolt does by Chevy. Now we're getting into things that I think are a bit more interesting and a bit more cutting edge. And by the way, shout out again, if I'm going to do honorable mentions, I do want to honorable mention the Nissan Leaf. So another kind of throwback shout out, which is out there in the market. We'll see how Nissan does. Another affordable EV, another one out there that is in that Bolt category. Let me know what you think. If you had the choice, Nissan Leaf or Chevy Bolt, which one are you going with? I'm a bit personally more excited about the Bolt myself, but the Nissan Leaf is really the original, the OG out there. So what do you think, Leaf versus Bolt? You can see what I picked on my exciting vehicles for 2026. So yeah, let me know what you think. Now let's go overseas to our friends in Germany, something that I think is an important thing for 2026, and that is the BMW iX3. I think this is an important step, something that is a really big deal to see, which is the Germans taking electric vehicles seriously. And so this is my number 3 pick that I'm excited about, and that is to see Germany really taking a step forward in their evolution of electric vehicles here. And they've obviously got the i7, which is great. I mean, it's really as close as you can get to maybe a Rolls Royce without being in one. It's a quiet, beautiful ride, but it's not necessarily a great electric vehicle when it comes to some of the other aspects like charging and range and those types of things, even though it's a great EV in terms of ride quality. I think this brings things in terms of user experience to a whole nother level with 800-volt architecture, with 400 kilowatt charging, with really, I think it's 10 to 80 in 20 minutes, something like that. Extraordinary speeds on the charging experience, and 400 miles of range possible in these. So I just think this is elevating things to a very competitive level, and it's nice to see the Germans taking things seriously. It's got a new user experience. It's got a very interesting display, not just on the actual touchscreen itself, but even across. It's got a very long display that you can set your user preferences on, and you can kind of program it the way you want to see it, a heads-up display. They've got some different autonomy features coming in the future. So just a number of things here that make this a serious player in the marketplace. So kudos to BMW. I just feel like they are taking things serious and they're really going to make an impact here. I don't expect this to be a mass market production vehicle. It's not going to compete with Model Y in terms of volume. But I think if you're looking for that luxurious kind of next level experience that some people don't feel like they get with the interior of a Tesla, I do think this is going to be something that elevates the driver experience and gives you better charging and gives you a little bit extra when it comes to the range. So it's just going to be one of those things that I'm even curious if it outperforms a Lucid, because we've seen things, for example, where the Lucid is ultra efficient with its design, but it's ultra sensitive to things like wind and element things like elevation, where yes, if conditions are perfect, the Lucid can get that extraordinary range. And I want to see how this does on the range aspect and how it holds up to charging. I feel like the Germans do a bit better with that. And I think the route planning on this is going to be really solid as well. The Germans seem to do very well with route planning, with charging and holding a very good charge curve and handling the thermals on these types of things. So super excited about the iX3. I think if I have a way to get a hold of this and do a test drive on it, this is definitely on my bucket list. Since I've done it so far, I'm going to go ahead and give a, I guess, a kind of alter shout out, I guess, or like if I was going to do the alternate to this, it would be the Mercedes CLA. So Mercedes CLA, I don't think is going to be as exciting as this one, but the Mercedes CLA similarly 800-volt architecture, faster charging speed. So if you're a Mercedes customer, I do think they are elevating their game as well. So again, just great to see the Germans getting involved. Let me know again what you think in the comments. Are you a BMW guy? Are you a Mercedes guy? Where would you go if you're going to look for that German driving experience, CLA or iX3? Where are you going to put your money if you're looking for that type of elevated experience for the cabin and for the interior and charging speed? And both of those, I think, are going to have good range. So that's my number 3 pick, is the BMW. So let's go to number 2. And number 2 might be a bit controversial because it's not a new vehicle. It's one that's tried and true, but I think it's important for a different reason, and that is the Tesla Model Y. This is important to me because of FSD. And I think as we see FSD continue to evolve, we just saw someone on the Out of Spec channel who did a 10,000 mile over a course of a couple weeks journey with 100% FSD. That's remarkable. Going from the East Coast to Seattle, down to Arizona, and from the Tesla diner, I think all the way across to South Carolina, where Kyle is at the track, and just did this entire cross-country trip with no interventions. Remarkable, right? Just how full self-driving has evolved and gotten to the point here where it is pretty darn close to autonomous. And yes, it's still supervised self-driving, but nonetheless, wow, this is getting real close, guys. And so whether it is in your Model Y or your Model 3, or whether it's the robotaxi or cybercab or whatever that might be, the Model Y, I think, is my pick. It's the best-selling of the electric vehicles in the United States. It might be in the world, depending on the. I've heard different reports here. They say it's the number 1 car in the world. I think there's some debate about that. Certainly, I've seen numbers that show there's some other vehicles that are outselling it. I'm no expert at that or how they're counting that. I'm not sure, but to be sure, the Model Y does well. So this is where I picked as the important vehicle, because this is the one that, for electric vehicles, is the one that people are buying the most with the FSD. This, because of that FSD software, is so important. Can they get the price down on it? Will more people embrace it? Will it become more commonplace in 2026 as it gets to be a confident and competent software addition to the vehicle? Yeah, I am very curious to see if this gets normalized and if this becomes a common part of the driver experience in the Model Y, and of course in the 3 and other vehicles as well. And if I were to give I guess an alternate to this place, I think it would have to be probably the robo taxi. Does it come out? We've seen them test driving around. I don't think it's as impactful as the Model Y because you own the Model Y. I think that's a big deal. This is something people have in their garage, whereas the cyber cab is something that will be in limited markets in 2026 if it does come out. And I do think it will be impactful. But for the number 2 spot, I'm giving it to the Tesla Model Y with FSD. So again, I know it's not a new vehicle for 2026. It was released in 2025, even though it is the 2026 model. But that FSD to me is where it really shines. And moving on to number 1, my number 1 pick for the most impactful vehicle of 2026. And it is not as dialed in, or it won't be as dialed in, I suppose I should say, as the Model Y. But I think it's the most important and will be the most impactful vehicle of 2026. And that is the Rivian R2. I think this is the year of Rivian. This is the most important vehicle for a number of reasons. And I say this understanding that FSD is incredible and important and years ahead of where Rivian will be and is. And in fact, R2 will not launch with the type of autonomy that it will eventually get with its newest hardware 3 generation. It will not launch with hardware 3 at all. We learned that from their autonomy day out here in the Bay Area. So what's important about this, though, is this is the make or break moment for Rivian. They will either be successful with R2, it will either sell and scale, and they will launch and get that ever important volume that they need, or they won't. And they've got their backing from Volkswagen that's going to allow them the funding to be able to build out R2 and to give them the runway that they need. And that's going to give them their Gen 3 platform and hardware and software and get them to autonomy. And, I've got a reservation, so I'm excited to see what happens. I'm not going to get the launch edition. I think a lot of people, interestingly, are going to wait a bit after launch because, again, the launch version will not get the Generation 3 hardware that has the features and the advanced autonomy capabilities. So some people will be very excited, and there's a ton of people that aren't going to use the autonomy and don't care about the autonomy. This is going to be an amazing, hopefully affordable SUV that is right in the wheelhouse of what the American family needs. And Bow Family EV is all about that, right? That is what we need so desperately, is an SUV that looks like an SUV. No disrespect to these other vehicles out there that have been calling themselves SUVs, the Model Y, the Mustang Mach-E, the Kia, these things that are somehow have been categorized as SUVs. I'm sorry, this is what an SUV is supposed to look like. There are only a few that I would categorize as a proper SUV. Kia EV9 would certainly fit into that category for me. And this, to me, though, is what I've been waiting on. And so this is super important because, to me, this is the future of Rivian. This is super critical for United States manufacturing. And I think we live in a copycat world. And I think we've got these American legacy auto manufacturers who love to copy each other. And when Ford and GM and these folks pull back and they cannot seem to make money on the trucks, and they don't really know which direction to go. I think if they can see Rivian making money and they are doing autonomy and Tesla is doing autonomy, I think this is critical. I think this is important. I think American manufacturing needs to shine. I think it is critical that it needs to be successful. I think Rivian is the key. I think it is important. What do you guys think in the comment? This is my number one vehicle. What is yours? How do you feel about Rivian? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. Like and subscribe. Hype this video. I appreciate you guys listening. Welcome to 26, and we'll see you on the next one.